with you and especially with my wife. And her name is Ceni, and she's joining me today to share my story of me suffering a stroke 6 years ago now.
All right.
So yeah,
All right. Well, like you said, my name is Sunny. And as we dive into Dan's very powerful story of surviving the stroke, I want to take a moment to recognize just how real and widespread the condition is. Just to give the audience some information that while the risk does double with every decade after 55, 1 in 4 strokes actually happen to people under 65. So this isn't just like an older adult issue, which is a huge misconception. And what's even more alarming, I found, is that most of the top causes like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, and obesity are preventable. And something that's really unique that we're going to talk about later is that sometimes you don't even have these pre-existing symptoms. Now, I did find out, which I thought was interesting, was that globally, Eastern Europe and Central Asia actually see the highest stroke rates. But truthfully, stroke doesn't discriminate based on age, background, or location. Now, recovery does look different for everyone, and something that I was able to dig up some percentages. Looks like about 10% of people fully recover, while 25% have minor impairments and 40% face long-term challenges. Um, Around 15% don't survive, but here's the light. Now for ischemic strokes, if I'm saying that right, 82% survive the first year, and even with hemorrhagic strokes, over half pull through. Now, these numbers highlight why awareness and fast response and everything that we're going to discuss today in your story, a stroke can change your life, but it doesn't have to end it if you know the signs and you can just jump into it. So Dan, I want to say it's an absolute honor to sit with you today and support your mission with Beyond the Stroke. And to start, honestly, I would just love to rewind the clock a bit and talk about your life before the stroke. Like I said earlier, I find it so interesting that despite the most common causes being things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, smoking, diabetes, or even obesity, you didn't have any of these, not that I recall, which makes your story not only inspiring,
no, no,
but really eye-opening. So I really want to start there. I want to start with what your life looked like before the stroke, like work, health, relationships, your energy, things like that. Tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. So I lived a normal life. Everything was going pretty good. Normal health wise, I was doing really well. I was exercising a lot because the doctor, although he didn't tell me I had any of those conditions, like you mentioned earlier about blood pressure and symptoms of stroke, I didn't have any of those things. I did qualify for almost being pre-diabetic, and so he told me I need to lose some weight. So he basically told me I was fat and I need to lose some weight, and so I took that seriously. And I started exercising more and trying to eat healthier, and eat less sugar. And I was successful at doing that. I started running a lot. I took on running. My uncle actually started doing the same thing, and so I got that idea from him. I started training for a marathon. I was running about 6 to 10 miles a day, going to work after that. Um, I, I was working for CVS at the time, as you know, um, and I had a successful career there up until that point before I left.
Okay. And
And I enjoyed working there as well. And
were you on any kind of because I know you're working out, so it sounds like you were really taking care of your body. How was your nutrition at that time?
I started doing low carb, which I know there's not going to be a lot of people that are fans of that, but controversial diet approach. And I mean, I got a lot of heat for it from some of my friends. Also, to name one, your ex-husband Richard, he definitely wasn't a fan of it. He warned me like, "Oh, that's probably not a good idea." And I said, "But I'm losing weight, so I don't know."
Yeah, so it was all
But
good.
yeah, I mean, it was working for me as far as losing weight. I don't know any long-term effects.
Right, right.
I wouldn't definitely. I don't think the stroke can, that had anything to do with the stroke because I had a pre-existing condition from birth, is what they told me.
Mm,
So it didn't really have anything to do with my current health. It just happened.
I see. Okay. So looking back, do you have any kind of recollection that your body was sending you any kind of signals that this was coming up for you?
No, not at all. I didn't sense anything strange or anything different in my body. Although I don't know if I knew the symptoms of stroke. I didn't at that time, or anything that would lead me to believe that, oh, my health is deteriorating to the point where I'm at high risk for a stroke or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
no, I didn't have any warning signals.
Okay. Well, let's go to the day of. I would like to revisit that day, and if you could just walk us through the day of your stroke. It sounds like you were very healthy. You were eating, even if it's a low carb diet. I mean, either way, you were eating in a way that was sustaining your body. It wasn't high fat, high sugar, well, high fat, healthy fat content, but it wasn't like a high sugar, high grease. You weren't mistreating your body. So we're in a space where we're healthy, we're fit, we're getting fitter, we're doing the things that we know are right for us. So at this point, there's literally zero signs. So once we get to that day, how did that transpire into this happening?
Yeah, so that day wasn't another normal day. I was hanging out with who's your ex-husband now, and I was with Richard. You were with my wife, Veronica. You
Mhm.
guys really connected and became good friends, as I became good friends with Richard. And you guys had a day of shopping. I spent the day with Richard and your son, David. We took him uh, to play mini golf, and everything was totally fine up to that point. We played mini golf, had fun, had a great time, wrapped that up, and then we left and headed back to your apartment. And we said that, let's go hang out. We'll watch a movie. We'll eat some bagel bites, which was Richard saying at the time. I mean, he probably still likes them now, but like he definitely was looking forward to that. It's like let's hang out, let's just eat some snacks and enjoy ourselves
Yeah,
while the ladies are out spending all our money.
yeah. That sounds about
So
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was a great day, And then we got to the house. I started getting a headache, and Richard was in the kitchen, I think, tending to the bagel bites, as I mentioned before. And so I was sitting there watching TV, and I started feeling like I got a headache, and I think it was that in a combination of just feeling fatigued and tired from work. And I asked Richard for some ibuprofen. I said, "Hey, I got a headache. You got some pills you can lend me?" And he gave me some, and it just kept getting worse, a little worse over time. And I think we ate, and after that, was still just the headache was kind of persistent. But at that time, it still didn't feel like something weird, or it wasn't giving me that sign like, "Oh, this is strange." Um, and even Richard was like, "Oh, he told me later. He's like, I didn't notice anything different about you. I mean, you look like you were kind of squinting to look at the TV." He
Hmm.
said, but I just thought, or you forgot your contacts or you didn't have your glasses on for some reason. And he didn't suspect anything strange either.
Right.
But I ended up just telling him, listen, I'm gonna go. I'm tired. My head's hurting, and I think that the girls are back or they're heading back. And so you guys had just gotten back. I walked down the stairs. You guys were on the second floor at that time. I had no issues walking. I didn't notice anything strange as far as that goes. I got to the car. I drove back home, was on the phone with a friend, returning a call from earlier,
Hmm.
talked to him and driving back home. Got home with Veronica, and the headache was getting substantially worse. And I could tell, I started to be able to tell, like, okay, this something's weird. I went to pee, I went to the bathroom, and then when I came out, I was starting to feel strange, and I gave Veronica a hug, and I don't know, something in the back of in my subconscious was telling me something's seriously wrong, and I could feel it. So I went over to her, I hugged her, and I told her how much I love her, and for her, that was like, what's going on? Like not because I hugged her, but because she has the crazy intuition, which you know about.
Yeah, yeah.
And so she sent something. So I went and sat down, and it was just getting worse. The headache was really, it was kind of numbing me out, sort of. That's hard to explain, but I sat at the edge of the bed and I was just sitting there. Veronica came to check on me, and I was just kind of sitting there with my head down, and I was drooling, kind of zoned out, I guess.
Okay.
And she told me, "You're drooling," and she went into panic mode because, like, oh, something's. I looked way out of it, and she told me, "Oh, you need to go to the hospital." And I told her, like, "No, I'm not going to the hospital. Crazy, I just have a headache. I'll be fine."
Yeah.
And like, I just gotta sleep it off. I'm ready to go to bed. Like,
Mhm.
and she said no. And when she mentioned to me that I was drooling, that kind of was like to me, like, what? Oh, what? I was like, oh man, I didn't realize I was drooling like that, and I guess I started to feel it too. And she told me, you need to go to the hospital, and I said, okay, but you're gonna drive me. And for her, that was immediately like he didn't say no. Okay, so even he's realizing something's wrong.
Yeah.
So she agreed, even though she really wanted the ambulance. She would have preferred an ambulance or the paramedics to come get me. And it was a miracle that I got down those 3 flights of stairs because we were on the third floor at that time,
Hmm.
on the third floor. And so I probably was feeling the effects at that moment, but I don't recall noticing it because my main focus was my head feeling like it was imploding, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I walked down the stairs. By the grace of God, I got down. I got into the car. We drove away, and it was getting really bad. And I was kind of zombie-like in the car, just waiting to get there, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was getting really bad. And I told her the pain that I was feeling was weird. I felt the pain in the back of my right eye. I could feel it back there, and it was such a strange feeling. I can still remember that experience now. A lot of things I have foggy memory on, but that I remember being such a weird thing, weird experience. She ended up driving past the hospital a little bit, so she had to make a U-turn. I was convinced, and I told her, I was like, "No, you didn't pass it. You didn't pass it. You haven't reached it yet." And she said,
Mm.
"No, I'm pretty sure I passed it." She's bad with directions. She usually relies on me,
Yeah.
um, or the GPS to kind of get places. But if I know, I'll help her out and tell her where to turn and this and that. So she knew definitely, okay, he's off because I know I passed it. And if she knows that, then I should have known too. We made it to the hospital. Finally, I stumbled out of the car. At that point, I don't even know how I'm getting up anymore. And the security guard noticed her panic, I guess, and me kind of barely getting out of the car, and he offered us a wheelchair. He rolled me in. We got in. I wasn't waiting long, but I got put in the waiting room, and from there, I think it was just a few minutes, and they came and got me.
Mm.
And then from that point, I went to see somebody in the room right there nearby. I don't know if it was a nurse or a doctor, but he started asking me questions, and that's when I really started to realize what the effects were happening to me at that moment from the bleed, from the stroke. And I remember one of the first questions he asked me was to smile, and he was like, "Is that the best you can do?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm smiling, And the facial droop was starting, and so the left side wasn't going up at all.
I see.
I got some now, but like it wasn't moving at all. And he could tell. I mean, obviously he's trained to look for this. So, and then Veronica didn't really notice, like I said, that moment, but he told me to put both my hands up, and all she saw was my right arm go up, and like he said, "Oh, you can't move you lift your left arm too." And I was like, "Ah." and I didn't realize it. And then when I saw that, then I was starting to realize too. And then she started crying at that moment. She broke down, and one of the nurses hugged her and was like telling her it was gonna be okay. And then from there, next thing I remember, I was on a stretcher, and the nurse was screaming at me to stay still, and I guess he was trying to scan me on some kind of a mobile CT scan I had to have. I don't know. I don't really know. But I just remember him yelling at me, telling me I gotta, you have to stay still.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned this before, but I also recall hearing over the intercom in the hospital stroke alert, and it was a strange thing where I was like, "Stroke? Who's having a stroke? I'm not having a stroke." And it was like it was a scary thing, and then I was out. They must have put me to sleep right there or something, and then from there it was just me waking up after surgery. But Veronica, she actually, her for her it just began right there. While I was out in a coma and then undergoing surgery, she took on this strength and she just put on her armor and was ready to battle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a surprise, but I mean, she really, really conquered the moment.
Yeah. Definitely.
The doctor came and told her like, listen, we don't know if he's gonna make it. This is the surgery we have to do. We have to cut him open. We had to perform what they call a craniotomy. They have to take a drill and cut a large piece of the bone of my skull out so that my brain could swell and expand. And they were explaining this to her, and she said she just remembers like thinking like he's gonna be fine. Like God got it. God has this, and I know it, and I believe it. And she was telling the doctor that, and she just got this courage about her, and she just became fearless. Like, and she told the surgeon, like, let me pray for you, and I'm gonna grab your hands and pray for your hands, and I know this surgery is gonna go the way it's supposed to, and he's gonna be fine. And the doctor was like, okay, I guess. Gave her hands, and for anybody who knows Veronica, she can be a little timid at times. That was really bold of her to do that. And but she was like ready. I don't know, switch flipped, and you saw her. You were there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know that she called me and we ran straight to the hospital. And it was one of the things that was really standing out to me was that seemed like she was in control. I mean, of course, we had a moment where, like, she had me there. So once she had a friend there, she was able to really break down. But
Yeah.
it was very quickly of we knew that we were going to pray and we knew we were going to put it in God's hands
Hmm.
and we knew that it was going to work out no matter what anybody said. And she took that
Right.
to her heart. And it was like she turned into like this warrior where she was going to fight for her family and
Hmm.
was pregnant at the time. And if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, the doctor almost didn't do the surgery. And that was one of the things that also kicked her into high drive, that this is one of those things that she was going to push into reality regardless of what they were saying. He wasn't going to do it. And then I guess
Right.
once he was convinced to do it, I guess he didn't feel like he had the experience or the expertise or whatever the case was. I know that there was some kind of issue there that really kicked her
Hmm.
into we're gonna pray and it's gonna happen no matter what. Like he's not gonna put him to the side and stuff. Um, I know that she was also pregnant at the time and it was a huge, huge thing to her to make sure that her family was intact and that you were there to see your son. So I know that that was
Right.
another thing that really drove her into like she just had this very strong warrior spirit. Um, and I know that when you were coming out of surgery, you still weren't completely like cognizant. Um, which is actually
No, I was in a coma for a while.
that's what I was saying. I was like, which is actually something that I'm
Hmm.
just remembering now is I think you were out for a bit, if
Yeah.
that, and you know what was that experience like? Like, a lot of people say that they have these experiences where they see things or they go places, but I don't recall you having any of those experiences. What was it like for you to be in a coma and to be in the hospital, like that time period of being in that space?
Yeah, as far as I know, I didn't almost die. I didn't have a near death experience because I didn't almost die. I mean, I took a lot of damage from the bleeding for sure, and you know, a lot of my brain cells were damaged, obviously, from the bleed. I didn't see anything. I remember Richard asking me, that was one of the first things he asked me when I first saw him. He's like, "Did you see anything?" And I was like, I hadn't seen anything. I wish I would have had an experience like that. That would have been
That would have
kind of
been
cool. I would have loved to have it. Yeah. Like, I wish I could have said, like, yeah, Jesus was right there when I opened my eyes. But no, I didn't have anything like that. Well, only the last thing I remember was, you know, seeing tape come over my face from the guy yelling at me, telling stay still, and then him attempting to keep my head still with some scotch tape.
awful.
And and then I was gone. Yeah. I was like, and then I had some of the best sleep I've ever had from, you know, because anesthesia is like legit. So,
Yeah, I hear good things
and
about that stuff.
but yeah, with the surgeon, he didn't want to perform the surgery. Like you said, we don't know the reason why. And Dr. Peterson, who actually took over in Miami in Jackson Memorial Hospital, where I was transferred to later, he told me the story, and he mentioned to me like, you know, the guy did the surgery and did a good job, but like he didn't want to do that at first.
Hmm.
And what he wanted to do was they wanted to airlift me to Jackson Memorial Hospital so he could do the surgery, so Dr. Peterson could do the surgery. And he said, no, I had to tell him on the phone. I had to yell at him like, you got to do this surgery. You need to do it now. You can't send him over here. He's gonna arrive here dead.
Right,
He's not gonna make it. Like, yeah, like you need to do that surgery. He needs his the swelling needs to occur so that the healing can begin. And in order to do that, you have to, you know, perform the craniotomy and get the bone out, and this has to happen. So that was kind of a shocking thing when I found that out. I was like, oh, okay. So I guess I
right. I
almost
was
didn't
gonna
have
say
any
that's kind of
experience.
crazy considering the importance of time in this kind of
Yeah,
situation. That
exactly.
you would even consider that. And to me, that was like, I'm telling you, that was like, it was a crazy thing. Like, we're gonna send him away. But that's, I do believe, like you said, Veronica's prayers, and Veronica's very adamant about making sure that you got through this and she wasn't about to allow any kind of delays or challenges to get into the way. So I do believe that she had a big role to play in that. Um,
Yeah,
when Let me ask, what was the moment where it hit you that like my life is about to change? Like I'm not
yeah.
the same person anymore.
Well, I don't know if I could point to one moment. I think it was like for months I had just I was anxious beyond uh understanding, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. It was a process of like I don't know if at the beginning I think at the beginning I remember thinking that I was gonna get back to 100% and it was just a matter of time and like and then later on there was like this humility I had to accept like, hey, no, you're probably not gonna get back to 100%, but you're gonna be the best that you can get to, you know, with your condition that you have, you know, like okay, I might be one-handed for the rest of my life. And that had I just had to accept that at a certain point. But throughout me being throughout the hospital in the hospital, it was more of like months and months of just being anxious and like subconsciously battling, I guess, you know, having to accept my new normal, new condition now this way
Right.
and accept that, you know, I have a son on the way, you know, with Veronica being just pregnant, you know, when this happened and watching her belly grow in the hospital as I was trying to rehab and get my shit together. Um, it was a huge motivation that helped me tremendously. and throughout the pain and rehabbing and getting out of bed at the crack of dawn to learn how to walk again. And I just convinced myself like you have to walk again, and you have to be able to walk with your son when he starts walking. And that was like a huge milestone for me. And I happy to say that I achieved that. And I remember walking with him the first time when he started learning to walk. Um, I felt I felt a little bit of relief. Like, okay, I remember feeling so anxious because when he was born, it was pretty fresh in my mind. Now it's pretty foggy because it's been 6 years now. But when he was born, it was still just a few years, couple years before when it had originally happened to me. And so I still kind of felt those emotions, and I remember thinking and telling myself when I was in the hospital, and the therapist telling me like, "You're gonna have to pick up a lot of toys, so you have to walk."
Hmm.
And
Right.
so like your wife is gonna need you. She can push you around in a wheelchair right now, but like she can't push a stroller in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
And I was like, no, you're right. And I needed that. I needed somebody to tell me that because there were days where like I didn't um I didn't want to get out of bed to do anything. I didn't want to. I felt lazy. I felt it was all those medications and plus just feeling like I didn't sign up for this shit.
Right.
For one,
Hmm.
you know,
I was just gonna ask too,
there
like,
was.